Get married already. An ugly, worthless daughter like you should get out as soon as possible. My father hurled these cruel words at me when I was 16. Did I somehow time travel to the past? Unable to argue back, I found myself forced into a marriage with a man I had never met. A loveless, cold marital life began. Inside, only despair spread. Yet, life is unpredictable. I could never have imagined such a turn of events. I am Leona, now 35. I went out to buy Valentine's Day chocolates, but ended up buying chocolates for myself. Then, my husband asked, "What about mine?" I messed up. I had intended to get something for him before entering the store, but I got so caught up in choosing my own chocolates that I completely forgot. Next time, I'll give him a fine wine. Yes, that sounds good. Now, I live a leisurely life in a home filled with love, but staying at home as a child was a painful ordeal. I never felt that way when my sister was little. I have a sister named Alice, who is 2 years younger than me. From infancy, her distinct facial features made everyone excited about her future. Years later, Alice grew into a cute girl that exceeded expectations, and pushed by our mother, she began working as a child model. However, her exposure was limited to brief appearances in local company commercials or side profiles on community event flyers, not exactly a major breakthrough. She was far from being a so-called famous child actor. To my parents, it seemed that any small achievement by my sister was a great source of pride, and they always kept her close like a decorative object, doting on her. At the same time, their interest in me rapidly faded. Perhaps because of a genetic throwback, I had a robust physique much like my grandmother, in stark contrast to my sister, who had a modern look with a small face and long limbs. Furthermore, despite everyone in the family being slim and eating the same meals without any extra snacks, I was the only one with a plump figure. I often wondered, why am I the only one like this? How many times did I envy her appearance, wishing I could look like her? But even as a child, I understood that comparing myself to others was pointless. I am me. I was determined to enhance my strengths, but my parents did not acknowledge my existence. Our first child is a failure in terms of looks and personality. One day, as my parents drunkenly complained about me while drinking in the living room, I accidentally overheard them. Those words stayed in my heart for a long time, making me feel like a failure. My mother, a beautiful lady confident in her looks and maintaining a strong focus on appearance even as she aged, was not just concerned with herself, but also interfered in others' matters. She would scornfully talk about a neighbor who went out to throw away trash early in the morning without makeup, in a t-shirt and sweatpants. This neighbor had quintuplets, and her high-earning husband was hardly ever home. Instead, her mother-in-law often visited, and occasionally there were raised voices. Looking back, I think she must have been enduring harassment. Even as a child, I could see she was always struggling. Is it wrong for someone managing solo parenting and numerous challenges to go out to throw trash in a t-shirt and sweatpants? Surely managing household chores in such circumstances deserves praise. Even as a child, I felt that my mother was unkind and lacked empathy for others. So, while it was painful that she didn't dote on me because she found me unattractive, there was a part of me that understood it. When we were young, my sister started receiving an allowance, but I wasn't given a single dollar. The discrimination became more and more apparent. For example, on days we had soup for dinner, my plate would be piled high with vegetables that my sister didn't like, while her plate was filled with meat. I didn't like those vegetables either. Despite my mother's behavior, my father seemed indifferent, and though my sister must have been aware of the abnormality in our family, it seemed she somewhat enjoyed her advantageous position. There was no one in this house to support me. If my sister broke something, no one would say a word, but if I did the same, I would be strictly scolded and criticized with the excuse that, "You're the older sister." Usually younger siblings might wear hand-me-downs from the older ones, but in our house, It was the reverse clothes my sister outgrew or no longer wanted were passed down to me. As a result, I was always dressed in clothes that were too tight with sleeves and hems too short. Being plumper than others and wearing such tight clothes made me look terrible. My chubby body stood out even more, and at school I was laughed at and always felt embarrassed. Even as my mother forced me to wear clothes that didn't fit, she too would adopt a mocking attitude. Everywhere I went, people would say, "Only your sister is cute," and though I was naturally cheerful, I gradually closed off my heart. Even when with friends, thoughts like, maybe they don't really want to be friends with me, or they just want to be close to my sister, would cross my mind. Now I understand that I was just being negative, but back then, I was caught up in these paranoid thoughts. My thinking became thoroughly negative, and my relationships grew strained. Although my circle of friends gradually dwindled, rather than feeling sad about it, I chose to be alone. I had grown tired of constantly doubting others' emotions when interacting with them. Being alone meant I didn't have to think about anything. During my gloomy middle school years, as high school entrance approached, I was shocked to find out that my parents had not paid my high school entrance fee. Surprisingly, they had never intended to send me to high school. They preferred to spend the money on Alice for her acting and dance lessons instead. After much persuasion, I finally got a promise from them that they would let me attend if I could pass the entrance exam for a state high school. At that time, Alice's entertainment activities were going well, and my mother burdened me with household chores. Squeezing study time between chores, I managed to pass the entrance exam to a state high school. I thought I could finally relax. As a child, I trusted my parents and felt relieved, only to be completely betrayed. Those people were more like strangers who just happened to give birth to me, devoid of any affection. Pay the entrance fee? Did we forget to do that? Even if you go to high school and study, with your face, you can't lead a decent life, so not being able to go to high school isn't a big deal. Without an apology, my mother casually dismissed it, and my father and Alice burst out laughing upon hearing it. By the time I realized the issue with the entrance fee, the payment deadline had passed, and I had to give up on going to high school. Although I had the option to work part-time and save money to enroll the following year, I had no energy left to do so. It felt like I had burned out. Having believed my parents' words and worked hard, I lost the opportunity to go to high school, and I just didn't care anymore. Even if I had a good education, no one would love me. That was all I could think about, even though education and being loved are completely different issues. In my teenage years, I wondered why I was so prone to such negative feelings, while my parents sarcastically said, "Since you can focus on housework, it's good you're not going to high school." I also started to think, maybe that's fine. I had no motivation to work part-time, and I didn't even feel like leaving my parents' house. Looking back, I think I was on the verge of losing my emotional balance. I spent my days just mechanically following my parents' orders. Then one day, out of the blue, my father said, "Tomorrow you'll be 18, right?" Yes, that's right. I was surprised that my father, who recently showed no interest in me, remembered my birthday. A smile naturally appeared on my face. My birthdays were always ignored, but could it be that this year they might celebrate it? Was it because I had been working hard on the household chores? A small hope began to grow in my heart. And then, get married already? An ugly, worthless daughter like you should get out as soon as possible. What? I was stunned by my father's words, delivered as casually as if he were asking me to go to the convenience store. Shock rendered me speechless, and without even looking at me standing there dumbfounded, he added, "Get your marriage registered tomorrow." Wait a minute. What are you talking about? We want to build connections with someone in the entertainment agency to support Alice's career. Apparently, there's someone looking for a bride for his son. But to register the marriage tomorrow. While drinking together, I casually mentioned that my eldest daughter thinks your son is handsome and things progress smoothly from there. Ha 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 ha. As my father spoke cheerfully, I felt an intense hatred like never before. I hadn't even seen this man's face, and here was my father, happily talking about essentially selling his daughter. Besides, it's unimaginable that the man would marry a woman he's never met. In today's world, such things should be impossible. Everything felt so unreal, or so I thought. Miraculously, it seems the sun actually likes your face. Be grateful. The moment my father said this with a smile, I was at a loss for words. He likes my face. I could hardly believe it. After all, I've always been told my appearance was deficient. To think someone would like such a face, I honestly thought he must be quite unusual. Is he desperate for a woman, or does he think anyone will be okay? Or is he planning to coerce me into something even worse? There must be some reason I can't think of any other explanation. Just as I was about to refuse, my father threatened, "If you don't listen, you can't stay in this house." And I ended up swallowing my words. Then I was more or less forced to sign the marriage registration. Watching this, my sister happily clapped and laughed. I resented my family and my inability to speak up more than ever. Thus, I ended up married to a man who can only be described as someone's son, with no clear idea if he really is anything remarkable. I was taken to a new home prepared by his parents and met him there for the first time. My husband Andy is 10 years older than me and has a reserved demeanor. He's not gloomy, but utterly devoid of vigor. I'm not in a position to talk, not being beautiful myself, but he didn't seem like someone I could have a romance with. Like me, he has a poor relationship with his parents, who said, "We are grateful he's leaving the house," thanking this marriage for taking him off their hands. Ah, so he's in a similar situation after all. Thinking this, a wave of despair washed over me, and I felt empty, as if we were just two burdens being married off to be gotten rid of. With these feelings, our new life together began. For the first month, we exchanged no words other than morning and evening greetings. We ate our meals separately, and I made sure we didn't meet around the house as much as possible. However, one day Andy suddenly started a conversation. "I know you don't like me. Weren't you also forced into this marriage by your parents?" I was indeed, but I hesitated whether to honestly say yes or not. Seeing my hesitation, Andy quickly understood and kindly said, "You don't have to say anything. I saw your photo and really thought you were wonderful. I think there must be some mistake. My sister is far more beautiful than I am. You don't understand yourself." I definitely felt something, and living together has only made that feeling stronger. Maybe it's because we grew up in similar environments. I really like your personality. Seeing Andy speaking so earnestly, I found myself unable to respond. Though his words bewildered me, his expression seemed sincere, not deceitful. Having never even been in love before, I was simply astonished. Is this also love? If it's painful for you to be with me, I don't mind if we get a divorce. I'll leave the divorce papers with you. But first, could we try to be friends rather than spouses? Andy smiled shyly. That smile briefly made my heart flutter, a fact I kept to myself. Confused by the notion of being spouses, his proposal to start as friends relaxed me slightly and allowed me to start seeing our relationship in a more positive light. After that, we began to have meals together. There were no set rules, and though I felt secure with Andy's personality, naturally, it took time to bridge the gap. Gradually, however, our conversations extended beyond mere greetings. As we talked about the weather and discovered each other's preferences, being with my husband gradually became less painful. As a result, we naturally started having meals together and watching TV together more frequently. Surprisingly, we both enjoyed reading, and we found many common interests. Above all, since we both had similar experiences with our parents, we shared many values and found comfort in each other's company. As we lived together, 1 year turned into 2, and by the 4th year, he proposed to me, and we became a true married couple. Is it strange to be proposed to when we are already married? Well, we were always a bit of an unusual couple, so there's no problem there. Having skipped the stages of dating and proposals, we started from scratch together. 10 years into our marriage, without any visits from our parents, we've been living fulfilling days, and even had a child. Just when I feel my life is still full of hope. On TV, there was news of a famous celebrity being arrested. Another celebrity was suspected of involvement in the crime, and it was the talk of the town every day. It was supposed to be someone else's affair for us as a couple. However, among those suspected of involvement, my sister Alice's name surfaced. She had been working as an actress, but I heard she had almost no work recently and was not active in the entertainment industry. She still had ties to her agency, apparently doing occasional work like extras. Despite never having made a name for herself as an actress, she was becoming known as a criminal. Photos of her, cozied up next to a famous actress at a club frequented by dubious men, had been captured. There was no official evidence of her committing a crime, and it seemed she had avoided arrest. However, the situation looked very much like she was involved. The person who leaked this photo was none other than a classmate of hers. This classmate had always disliked my sister, and it seemed that after casually spotting her at a club, they took a photo and sent it to friends claiming, "She's getting involved in shady stuff." It quickly spread from there. Then, someone sold the photo, sparking the current scandal. Even as her sister, all I could muster was a sigh. I thought it had nothing to do with me anymore. But suddenly, our parents showed up at our house. As soon as I opened the door, my mother, with tears in her voice, clung to me saying, "Leona, help." She looked on the verge of breaking down, and my father was barely keeping her upright. What had happened? My once beautiful mother was emaciated, noticeably thinner, her hair graying and unkempt. "What's going on? You say you need help, but I've already left home a long time ago. We have no one else to turn to but you. Why?" As I struggled to grasp the situation, my father said, "I'll explain." It turned out that my sister had been arrested recently. Being a little-known actress, it hadn't made the news, and I was hearing about it for the first time. As the saying goes, news travels fast. And it seemed her classmates had quickly got hold of this information. Despite not being in the news, the rumors had grown, and now the neighborhood was abuzz with tales of my sister's misdeeds. As a result, my parents were ostracized by the community, their home vandalized with graffiti, stones thrown at it, and they received nuisance calls. "We can't go back home. What has she done? It was a mistake to have her. You're my only child." My mother hugged me and wept. "So, can we live here with you? Let's get along as a family." What convenient timing to say such things. I slowly pulled away from my mother. "Leona, I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore." "Don't say that. We've always gotten along well, haven't we?" "That's right." My mother agreed. When I resisted, the two of them were bewildered. It was clear they were trying to appease me. "If you really cared, you wouldn't have let your daughter be married off like that. You might as well have sold me. But you're making it work here, aren't you? It turned out to be for the best, right?" I felt a surge of anger at my father laughing. "Ahaha." And I forcefully pushed him away. "Stop it. How can you say it turned out to be for the best? What if he had been a terrible person? Do you realize what could have happened to me? How can you laugh after doing such a thing? This family is not my family." I raised my voice, hurling my emotions in words. Before I knew it, tears were on the brink of spilling. Glancing to the side, I saw my husband quietly standing by me, gripping my hand tightly. Sometimes it's necessary to forgive others' mistakes. "Leona," irritated by my father trying to sound wise and placating me with a cheap smile, I finally said something I had held back for a long time. "Then let me say this. Why don't you rely on each other's lovers? You talk about needing a heart to forgive mistakes. Why don't you show me how it's done?" When I said this, they froze on the spot. Their faces turned pale, and they exchanged glances. Why? Did you think I didn't know? You both seemed to think it was a secret, but I knew all along. In fact, each of my parents had a lover. Both of them had assumed no one was aware of this fact, but I, and probably Alice too, had known about it. My family's relationships, both parent-child and marital, have long been broken. What part of this is a happy family? Were you cheating while I was still around? My mother screamed, her voice rising, and my father retorted, "You too." I watched their intense argument with cold eyes. Isn't forgiving mistakes important? Stop making excuses and just forgive each other already, I said mockingly, laughing through my nose, and they fell silent, unable to respond. Don't drag me into your petty quarrels. This has nothing to do with me anymore, so don't rely on me. The harassment and isolation from the neighborhood, it's all your own doing. Handle it yourselves. I vented years of accumulated anger at them. Then, perhaps admitting they had betrayed each other, they desperately begged me, "Please forgive just me." What a pitiful sight. Of course, I rejected their pleas and declared, "If you keep pestering me, I'll take this to the proper authorities." Though I blurted out about the proper authorities, I hadn't really thought about where exactly I would go. The police probably wouldn't bother with such matters. Well, maintaining a strong stance is key, haha. Whether my words had an impact was unclear, but they seemed to feel that I was serious as they slumped their shoulders and sat down weakly. "Let's go inside." Andy spoke gently, urging me to go back into the house. Prompted by my husband, I entered the house without a word. After a while, I could hear my parents shouting my name from outside, but I ignored their voices. About a month later, I learned that our family home had been set on fire. Whether it was related to Alice's incident was unclear, and no perpetrator had been found, but given the vandalism and harassment the dilapidated house had suffered, some malicious intent was undoubtedly at play. My parents both had affairs, but they never divorced. After the fire, my mother sustained minor burns to her face. Fortunately, her life was not in danger, but the scars remained on her face in an abnormal condition. Whether it was because of this or some other reason, one day my father silently left the house, abandoning her. She believed that he left because of her disfigured face, and she hardly ever left the house afterward. Since they both had affairs, it might have been more about reaching their limit than her appearance. However, the true reason is unknown to anyone. Even though my mother was unaware of the affairs, I believe I understood my father better. In fact, it seems that my father had been borrowing money from lenders and currying favor with powerful people for the sake of my sister Alice. Due to the scandal with Alice, he lost his job and now lives a life hounded by massive debt. Alice, having served 1.5 years in prison, appears to be struggling financially and is rumored to be in dubious videos. I hear she is mentally unstable, but to me, it no longer matters. The phrase "what goes around comes around" really hits the mark. I have decided to observe from afar how their lives will unfold. Meanwhile, I am busy every day surrounded by my 4 children. When the twins were born last, it was truly hectic. My husband and I, having only middle and high school educations, worried whether we could afford to raise 4 children when we found out about the twins. Nevertheless, we both worked hard to obtain qualifications. I work as a medical office assistant, and my husband works as a call center manager in a company that does not discriminate based on nationality or educational background. Studying while taking care of children, especially during pregnancy, was incredibly challenging. I am profoundly grateful for my husband's support during his busy job search and career changes. Though our marriage started under unusual circumstances, having a husband who actively helps with childcare and housework has been incredibly fortunate for me. With these thoughts, I even start to feel a bit of gratitude towards my parents. My husband not only cherishes our children, but he also treasures me like a lover. It's a bit embarrassing, but sometimes we enjoy dates just the two of us. We go to the movies or cafes, which might seem like teenage dates, but for us, who never had such moments in our marriage, they hold special meaning. We plan to continue cherishing each other and loving our family. Hoping for another happy day tomorrow, I savor each day as it comes.